Welcome to YIMBY Nation, a podcast exploring U.S. housing and the roadblocks to building more equitable neighborhoods. Join Jimmy, Peter, and V as they, and special guests, offer their unique perspectives on building more diverse communities and addressing the social problems that emanate from the lack of decent, safe, and affordable housing. Our hosts have served in the fields of advocacy and nonprofit, public, and private development, and are driven by their passion for community empowerment. Join the conversation and share your thoughts on social using hashtag YIMBYNation.
Hi, and welcome to YIMBY Nation. Our guest today, Dr. Tiny, also known as Michele Williams, is the chief visionary of COBA US, which is a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to connect, organize, build, and advocate healthy community small-scale development. Michele is also the executive director of the Fuller Center of Housing in Delaware. She has a Ph.D. in public policy. She has 14 years of experience as a real estate investor and over 30 years of strategic development as an Air Force medical officer. Michele helps communities use small-scale development to create large-scale solutions that provide various housing options that works for health, the economy, and employment. Michele is one catalyst to challenge the housing status quo by thinking differently. Her bold initiatives inspire us, and we look forward to sharing your thoughts today. Jimmy, Two Dogs, and I are excited to have you join us today. Thank you again for joining us, Michele.
Yeah, thanks for having me and bringing attention to these housing challenges that we have.
Great. Tell us about your organization. Tell us about how you started.
Yeah, so definitely not a straight journey from point A to point B. I started out as a pharmacist and began what would be eventually a 30-year military career. But along the way, when I wasn't on active duty, I had an aromatherapy business, a storefront, and I became really interested in real estate investing. And then when I knew I was going to wind down my military career, I was turning 50, and I thought, what am I going to do for my second act? So I decided to get a Ph.D. in public policy. But my research examined the relationship between health and housing with an emphasis on public policy. So along the way, I combined my health and my business background, my real estate experience, and with my research, I realized that where one lives matters, that one's zip code should not dictate one's health outcomes. And when you think about the social determinants of health, housing and finances are two of those. So I came to see that the real estate strategies and the way I was investing, I was doing nothing to solve or to help solve our affordable housing issues in my where I was investing. So I combined all this. I talked to people all over the country to see what everybody else was up to. And I just decided to start these two nonprofits and as a way to improve public health, because housing is everyone's concern.
Starting up an organization is a tremendous task. And starting up one dealing with the issue that you're dealing with is even more of a Herculean task. So what were some of the obstacles that you faced starting up the Fuller Center in Delaware?
Well, the Fuller Center of Delaware came out of a bike adventure that the Fuller, their biggest fundraising is through this bike adventure. And my husband and I rode from Nashville to Natchez, Mississippi on the trace. And it was 444 miles in 7 days. And along the way, we stopped in communities and we fixed houses. Because if you can fix houses and keep people in their houses, you not only serve a community need, but you don't allow those people to fall into homelessness. Anyway, it was such a profound experience for us. We went back to Delaware and we said, oh, we don't have a Fuller Center here. let's start one. So we began investigating how we could start one in Delaware. But in the process of this, Jay, my husband, was hit by a car riding his bike, and then he passed 12 days later. So after a recovery time passed for me, I picked up where we left off, and I established the partnership in October of 2021. And as far as obstacles go, the Fuller Center for Housing, they're based in Americus, Georgia. They are very helpful in establishing these partnerships with them. But the biggest challenge for me was, I guess, a challenge that a lot of not-for-profits have, and it's getting the right board of directors and building your team. And we continue to do that, but to get the right people on board to be able to help your mission. So that's been the only really big obstacle. And it's not really an obstacle, it's just something that we're working through.
Tell us about your ties to Habitat for Humanity and the folks down in Georgia.
So Millard Fuller started both Habitat for Humanity and the Fuller Center. And that was his, the Habitat for Humanity was his for about 29 years. And then it became so big that they were losing some of the principles that Millard really emphasized when he began that mission. So there are two different organizations. They both serve two different needs. But the bottom line is they provide housing, and a lot of the structural things, no interest mortgages, et cetera, community-based building, faith-based organization, those are similar. The difference between Habitat and Fuller is that Habitat has a lot of layers of bureaucracy that says, okay, you're going to build, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath here and here and here. Whereas the Fuller Center partners not only with the Fuller Center in Americus, but also with community faith-based organizations, business organizations to propel what that community wants. So it's not necessarily that we build houses, we might just fix roofs or build a handicap ramp or all those little things to keep people in their house. And also, even if they wanted a community garden, it's whatever that community wants because they are the experts. And we form the volunteers to go and do that work that we've been asked to do.
You don't take government funding, which is somewhat similar to the premise for Habitat. So why don't you take government funding? And if you do, under what circumstances do you take it?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. So we do partnerships with government that includes accepting funds to help with the beginning stages of construction, provided that doing so does not limit our ability and our mission to proclaim our Christian witnesses, and it doesn't allow us to create dependency or undue control on with the government with our partnership. So some of the other reasons are government funds. They come with a lot of restrictions, and they can conflict with our foundational principles. Sometimes government funds and organizations are at the mercy of another governing party or unelected officials. And because we get a lot of our money from donations, we don't want taxpayer funded money into our stream because we don't know that that's what the taxpayer wanted to spend his taxpayer dollars on. And lastly, we believe that government has a role in housing, but it's really for those people that our services cannot help. They don't meet our criteria.
Because of the faith-based aspect, right? And also because of, is that partially the reason why? Because of your faith base?
Yes, and religion, faith-based, and the federal or state or local government may not be in alignment. Their mission is different than ours in some situations. And so if we were to accept government funding, regardless of what it was for, that really puts a limit on the control that we have just to do our mission alone.
I can also understand what you mean by the requirements that comes with government's funding. It is very limited depending on what you are trying to do. So it's funny because housing, health, financing, making community better, making our children live in a better place is it's no secret to what Jimmy and Dogs, all of us do. Jimmy's been working on housing for years. Most of the work he works on takes 100% of government funding, whereas Two Dogs is all about making sure that the folks that are at Mohegan, the children, the elders, everyone is able to live there regardless of their income or their location. So, but doesn't take as much government funding. So it's a whole new perspective on a reason why you don't take the government funding, and I understand.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Michele, when you're, what do you do for lobbying when you have to go lobby a state and federal government? Do you do your own lobbying?
We're a 501c3, so we don't do lobbying. Okay. We do talk to our government officials. We, us being in the YIMBY conversation, we have to engage our public officials. So, but we don't lobby. We can suggest, we can entertain, we can converse, we can move forward on plans, but we don't lobby. So YIMBY Action out of California, of which we are a member, they are the C4 that does the lobbying piece.
Have you created any other corporate businesses and corporations to help generate money?
So just like Habitat, we are in conversation with Lowe's or Home Depot, other building suppliers in our area, a lot of schools to do apprenticeship programs. So yes, we do a lot of outreach because it's really about community and how to engage the community, whether it's money or time or in-kind donations.
That's kind.
Yeah. Are you, let's say, how many states or how many countries are you in?
Well, since we are just starting, relatively new, and I had been developing relationships for the last 3.5 years with everybody that needed to have the conversation about affordable housing. And I was really doing a lot of policy work because as you know, the zoning, the density, the old policies that have been on the books since the 1970s and before, they don't serve us anymore. And so I was thinking, well, if I were to address policy and get policy changed for just generically, then people that, for instance, had an acre property, they could put some accessory dwelling units in the backyard and use them, to expand rental properties. So I thought, let me do the hard work on policy generation and correction moving forward so that it would make it a lot easier for other people to build their own wealth through real estate, but also helping with affordable housing. So that's really what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And ever since the Fuller Center started, that's when we've started to program out the different types of communities we're building in our pipeline, starting with our funding. Opportunity zones are another thing that we're looking at. So right now we're local and we're going to expand through Delaware. And then after Delaware, we're starting on the northeastern part of the country. And the key is really getting to a process we have several different models of tiny house communities as an example. What model works best in what situation? And so to be able to solidify that, prove that, so proof of concept, so that when we go to pick a state, Pennsylvania, we're able to do best practices because we've already done them and we're getting to the point very quickly.
So Michele, it's not a cookie cutter program, is it?
No, it's not. And there is not one solution for affordable housing. So the conversation begins with, how do you bring in the people that need to be there? You don't want to just have a cookie cutter thing because it doesn't work. For instance, tiny houses don't work for everybody. So the housing types, the values of housing, affordability, legal issues, NIMBYism, all that goes into looking at where to build, what to build, how to build it, how to fund it. Is it a rental? Is it an ownership? And how do you create wealth, for generational wealth or wealth of the community and wealth of the individual?
When you talk about tiny house, because you're right, not everybody likes tiny house, but what is a tiny house, right? So typically in the programs that you're doing, what is the typical square footage when you say tiny house?
So by definition, tiny is anything less than 399 square feet. There's a lot of tiny houses there's 6 different types of tiny houses, but I won't get into that because that is a whole nother conversation. But some people live in 95 square foot houses. Those are considered shelters if they don't have their own facilities, bathroom, cooking facilities. We like for 399 because they can both be on wheels and be traveled, or they can be on a foundation. There's more flexibility with 399. The issue is, what is the minimum size housing that is a requirement in that community? As an example, our county allows a minimum size of 346 square feet. Whereas if you go to another municipality, just right, it's in the county, but it's in its own municipality, their minimum size is 1,200 square feet. So again, everybody is different, and 1,200 square feet to me is not tiny. That's normal. That's an average sized house. 1,500 is really average. So we look at 399. Sometimes it'll get up to 450. We have a modular builder in Delaware right up the road from us, and they can do 48 units on 3 assembly lines. And then we can do that more quickly than the 1 and 2 and 3 individual builds. So if we get our model so cost effective that we're not throwing away any materials, using every piece of wood, that allows us to pass that savings on to either the owner or the renter or the person who's going to buy the tiny and put it as an ADU.
I have a question for two dogs and Jimmy. Dogs, you first. Can you see yourself in a tiny house, let's say 399 square feet?
Actually, I'm single. I found a place not much bigger than that last week in Niantic that I was going to rent. When I showed up, the lady realized who I was. She goes, "I think it's too small for you." I said, "It's perfect. That's what I want. My cleaning lady will love me."
No. Okay. What about you, Jimmy?
Oh, sorry.
We've all had big houses and all that, but you know what? You get to a point in your life where, you know what? It's easier. Small is better.
Yeah.
I could live in 350 square feet. Having grown up in Alabama in a house, 2 bedrooms, occupied sometimes by 12 people of different families. I could adjust to any surrounding.
Yeah.
Most of
and
us
even
could.
Even when you think about your current house that you live in, how often do you use your dining room if you have one? How often do you use every bedroom? And I always tell people, if you're considering tiny, go and rent. You go on Airbnb and rent one for a week and see what you like, what you don't like. Is 250 too small, or is 300 okay? And so you have to learn how to downsize, but what you learn is you keep only those things that are very important to you to make your life fulfilling.
Yes, that's true.
Yep, I just need my microwave and TV
I just need
and
this.
see, and popcorn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
That's
then I'm good to go, right? I have six seats in my car. I only use one. Let me ask.
That's a-
I'm curious. Like this show is called EMB. So you've been in the housing for quite a while. I guess give us your worst NIMBY story, and give us your best NIMBY story. Worst being the a NIMBY story that, you know, when I say worst, I mean it was something that you would not have expected, even though we expect most of anything.
Yeah. You know, NIMBYs have the loudest voice, but they're not the highest volume of people. And they fear change. And it's the fear of the unknown and misunderstood. So when you have an affordable housing development or unit being made or being considered, they're the ones that go to the county council meetings and yell and have all the signs and whatever. They won't be living there, but that's what they don't want it in their community. It was okay that I would have been here, but it's not okay for you to be here. The other thing is about definitions.
Yeah.
These people hear affordable housing and they might hear Section 8, or they might hear shelters and drug abuse. So there's a disconnect between their reality, their misconceptions, and the education. So I remember a 4-hour meeting, and it was a jaw drop on just learning what people really thought. And I was wondering if I was in an alternate universe by their thinking of what affordable housing means. And it only means, quite frankly, anybody that spends 30%, that's what the goal is on their housing. That's all that affordable means. But when you attach drug abuse and Section 8 and homelessness, that's where it gets all confusing. So we just started a YIMBY campaign in our county. And our biggest thing is advocacy and education, and really engaging the public and decision makers to build the inclusive communities so that they are affordable, equitable, empowering, and sustainable, so that everybody in the community thrives. Because like I said, housing is everyone's concern. So I have some good stories about that. We've just had our third summit, and more people came, and they just from everywhere. It was incredible, and saying, sign me up, I want to help. And from all walks of life. And it was just wonderful. We just had that in end of October.
Michele, I was just thinking while you're talking, like, we've all got that one story that keeps our heart involved in all of our projects that we do. Yeah. What is that one story, that one family that brings that just got your heart and you said, this is why I do this?
Yeah. I can't say personally, I don't have that related story that I was homeless or I was housing insecure. But what I do see and what I have experienced, I used to teach a real estate class, and people used to come for a way to build wealth or an additional income. So I ride my bike a lot. So one time I was riding my bike and I pulled up to I was grocery shopping. I do my things on Friday, and I do all my grocery shopping, bank, mail, everything on Fridays afternoon. I ride my bike. And this one time I came out, I'm stopped at the light, And I'm looking, and it's this guy that I know. And he's got this sign. And I was shocked because I know this guy works full time. And I pulled over, I took my helmet off, and I was like, what is the issue here? You know, tell me what it is that you need. And he said, yeah, I work full time. In fact, I work overtime. But my current rental unit, the owner wants to sell. So now I've got to go and look for a unit that I can afford near where I work. And there is none. And I got to thinking, really, when you're not in that situation, you don't realize that that is a huge situation for people. And I've overlooked it. And now I'm painfully aware when somebody says to me, I need a rental that I can afford near where I work, play, and pray. And that isn't easy to do. And so it's that look in the eyes, I guess. It's the look in his eyes that I'm on my way to homeless and I'm fully employed. Right. How did that happen? So that's what I want to fight the hard fight.
That's a tough to really think about it, because we've all got jobs. But what if we had to do that? This man's brave. He went out and did that.
Yeah.
Yep. Luckily, he doesn't have any kids. I mean, add that into the equation. Right. And then, you know, if you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing and you have kids, what if they fall down and need a medical treatment? Then you have to decide. Yeah. That's huge. I mean, when you're not, like I said, when you're not in their shoes, when you're not walking with them, it's different. It's a different conversation, and you can be a NIMBY and can be kind of cool about being a NIMBY. But I could just go on. So one of the things that I did to really, really learn about this is I got involved in our point in time, our PIT count. And granted, it's homeless and rooflessness and shelterless that we interview for a 24-hour period. It's all over the country. And I really heard a lot of stories. And a lot of it was systemic. It happened to them because of foster care. So it was a systems problem that got them started into a housing insufficiency and then homelessness. So that was an awakening for me to really understand how people live and what got them there. And so one of the things that we're doing in our YIMBY campaign, in fact, the last training we did a webinar on how to tell your story, because we want those folks that are in those situations to be able to effectively tell the story and tell what could have happened for them so that they either did not get in that situation or that they can move out of that situation. Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that you touched base on, which is education. This story that you just mentioned, this particular man that is working and unfortunately has to move out because the rent went up and he just can't afford even with a full-time income. He may go to several YIMBY, not in my backyard, YIMBY towns, and will not find a place because all they'll see is, affordable. That means you're either on Section 8 or you're not working or you don't belong here, without understanding the background. So I think, it sounds like you have two challenges. The challenge is educating the NIMBYs about the significance of what this means. And it's not the schematics that they think, but also you have the challenge about educating the entire country about the significance of tiny homes, right? Because not a lot of people know. If you say 399 square feet, I think the first impression is, oh my God, that's like the size of one's kitchen.
Right.
in a regular house. So what does that mean? How does that work? Do you often have, let's say, design templates that is attractive and very easy to convey what that means?
Right. So when we look at the overall rentals and the 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, how do you solve that in say a 400 square foot house? So there's ways to do it. And so, yes, like I said, the modular builder can build the same house over and over, whether it's a 2 bedroom, a 1 story for an older couple that doesn't want to climb up. Because a lot of the tiny houses have lofts. They don't need to have lofts, but they do. And so we have 6 different designs. And that, again, really utilizes every ounce, every speck of wood to really keep our costs down. Because he is a private organization. He's another faith-based organization that really comes into the community and says, how can I help? So that's why we've partnered with him. But yeah, people are flipping out on 400 square feet, we'll just say that. But then they go on HGTV or NIMBY Town Action or whatever TV station and say, wow, these are so cute. Great, they are cute, but they are one solution to this problem.
Michele, it's amazing work you do.
I agree.
I love it because I know that these people work hard. They make minimum wage or slightly above. It's been wage stagnation for how many years, but the cost of everything is going up. And when they're busy working, I'm busy working for them, trying to get policy changed so that I can build tiny houses and I can allow them to utilize their land. Because in COVID, as an example, they might have lost their job and then they went into forbearance. COVID was over and it was time to start back to work, but they didn't have a job left for them. So, but they still have a mortgage because the forbearance was over. So now what's the slide into foreclosure? What if they took their backyard and put a tiny on there and got $300 to $400 rent? That could keep them out of foreclosure. So they don't know how to do that. So it's somebody like me that really wants to work hard for those opportunities so that everybody wins.
Oh, I have another question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about because of the size, let's use the 400, depending on how it's built, the vertical or the horizontal. I'm going to assume that at some point you can consider doing these in modules and just bringing them over because, you can essentially have all these fabricated in a shop and just keep them going where it needs to be.
Yeah. So modulars are basically stick-built houses in a warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So they have they're not subject to weather conditions. And they could be made faster and more systematic. And actually, I think they're better made because they're all systematized. And it doesn't leave a lot of personal or professional differentiation because it's made by a machine. So that's why I really like the modulars, and you can do more of them and more quickly.
It's also easier to train someone that isn't experienced in construction. Like you said, this particular example that you use, if this person can put a small 300 square feet house behind their backyard to create the extra income, they don't need to worry about going to an architect, having to manage a bunch of contractors. They just have to coordinate getting it there and then doing all the connections that needs to be done. So it's also less stress on them with low education. And
to educate the homeowner on how to be a landlord.
Exactly.
So another piece to the education.
So Michele, let's say you've got this family of 3, right? 2 parents, a baby. Now they have twin boys, but they're established in that neighborhood. Could they expand on that tiny house?
You can, depending on how the house is built, you can put additional modules. And again, how much they can build really goes to the density and the size, the setbacks,
Zoning,
the frontal, all these building type of issues for a person, even if they had a garage and wanted an upstairs apartment for an accessory dwelling unit, that again has to go through all this crazy permitting process. So if our policymakers and our elected officials really want to tackle the affordability conversation, let's look at starting at what's inhibiting you or prohibiting you from allowing people like me to build and to train people to be landlords or live in a tiny house or build on to make a little unit for their additional kids. And a lot of parents do that for their college age kids that they can't afford the dorm. So they will put an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. And if a person did have a tiny house, is it a movable tiny house? But also the other idea that you can use is if you think of the mom and pop in that tiny house, and then they have the two kids, they can move up to a bigger tiny house and sell the one that they've been living in. So again, it's the sustainability.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I think, you are doing some amazing work. I did have one other question for you. For when our listeners, I want to learn more about, tiny homes and how it benefits community. Is there any book that you can recommend or even how to get in touch with you to get some additional information?
Yeah. So there's a lot of great information, and me being more of a research analytical type of person, I don't want to say that there's one book. If you really want to learn about the history of why we are in this mess that we're in, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein talks about the history of the impact of federal, state, and local government on real estate and what got us here. Another one, if you're in the community and want to learn how to be creative in building sustainable housing, there's a book, it's called Strong Towns, A Bottom-Up Revolution. It's by Charles Marone, and he is the president of a not-for-profit called Strong Towns. And another one, if you, there's do-it-yourself building. There's also, which of course comes with a whole different conversation about zoning and rules and building codes and whatever. But lastly, my favorite small book is Building Small, a Toolkit by Jim Hyde. And really the focus on that book is using small, whether it's small tiny houses or small scale development, or if it's mixed use with businesses on the top, on the bottom, and housing on the top, how small can make large impacts. And because I am a researcher, and because I think it's important to know some valuable sources, we just had, I just finished the website YimbyDelaware.com, and in there's 2 pages of articles and books and podcasts that I can recommend, and you just click the link and it'll take you right there. And your second question is, how do people get a hold of me? Quite frankly, the best way to get me is through email. Michele with 1 L at COBAUS.org, and check out our YIMBY website, because you can get a hold of me there too, YimbyDelaware.com. And the next website we are rolling out is called Dirt to Keys, because our organization finds land, a parcel, a piece of dirt, and goes through the whole process of eventually handing those keys to a tenant or an owner. So that's our next bigger website that we've got. In the interim, I'm always available to have a different conversation, even though I might not be in your market. I do a lot of research for people that I think that if you don't have research, you can't make smart, valid policies. And so that's why research is a big piece, not only to our YIMBY campaign, but everything that we do in our business.
Jimmy and Dogs, do you have any final questions for Dr. Tiny and for Michele?
I have a comment to say, that's Kataptavosh Mondo Wigo. The creator is good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I just need a clarification. I think I heard you say you rode a bike 400 plus miles.
Yes.
That's
So
correct?
I'm a huge cyclist. I do about 7,500 miles a year.
All right.
And I do my errands and everything, even though my husband was hit and killed. Biking is keeping cars off the road. It's keeping me healthy and fit. It's just part of my health routine. I love it. It's stress release. I mean, everything about biking is great. So I rode with the Air Force cycling team. So I've done everything from that to I ride the trails on the beach, so I do it all. I just love bike riding. Yeah. That's what I do.
7,500 miles isn't it from New York to LA and back?
I haven't done that one yet, but I do a lot of volunteering work for other organizations around biking. And 2 years in a row, we did New York City to Philadelphia. It's 28 miles on the Greenway. And I was part of the, we call them crew. So, feeding people and working on their bikes and doing all that. I didn't ride myself, but supporting the people that did ride. And that was kind of fun. That was a 2-day trip, and that was a local trip. But when we did when I rode with the Air Force, that was on Ragbri. It was riding across Iowa. And that was 525 miles in, I don't know, like 6 days. Yeah. So it's fun. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think the three of us have a lot of catching up to do in that one.
I think I'll take her word for it. It's fun.
All of us here are developers, and we appreciate what you're doing to bring a whole new perspective to this game and how it's changing lives and the communities. And thank you so much for sharing your story and for all you do for the world.
Yeah, well, thanks. You're bringing the microscope on it, because that's what needs to happen in a very positive way and really get people encouraged and excited.
We want to do that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And this is the end of our YIMBY Nation podcast for this month. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us and listening to today's episode of YIMBY Nation. Continue the conversation in your communities and on social using #YIMBYNation. Connect with V at www.vaseconstruction.com. Connect with Jimmy at www.sincereconsulting.com. And connect with Peter by searching Collaborative Development Consulting on LinkedIn.com. Please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform so we can continue helping communities thrive. Email us at contact@yimbynation.com or visit the podcast website at www.yimbynation.com. Until next time.